whoops, 602. That's all right. Let me get my lip balm out. Find my restream window. There we go. Everything seems to be working. John Yu, how you doing? Will Cyber. Zayamovich. Yes. 5 a.m. Yeah, I'm still. I was up at probably 4:15. I'm slowly. I don't know if there's something wrong with me or just my doughy old age or mental non-well-being or whatever. But went to London and was jet lagged the whole time, and then came back and I've still been jet. I mean, I woke up at 4:15, which is not normal, but I'm slowly waking up later and later. So hopefully, I'm back to normal-ish this week. That'd be great. Share more hard surface tips and tricks. Be great if I can watch it when I'm home. Sure, I'll be covering a bunch of hard surface stuff today-ish in regards to like ZModeler and layout, but more prop-based. However, if I go to my drive here and we do a search for ZBrush hard surface linear walkthrough, there's a bunch of stuff in here that you can, here's probably hours and hours of ZBrush hard surface technique. Cool. Good morning, Raphael. Parmex. Yeah. Well, so that's well, I guess we'll jump right in. Let me grab, so I'm going to go with here's the two things I usually link to is YouTube playlists here. So I'm going to go ahead and link this. You can jump on here. And the big things that usually, if you're new to ZBrush, go to the Intro to ZBrush New and Updated playlist. If you want to go through any what's new, like the ZBrush 22, what's new? I guess we could cover some of this if you all wanted. But it's all here. Here's the new ZBrush 2022 features. Dive in there and check them out. And then the playlist, if you want to go back through the playlist, you can go through here. Look for the big blue genie. And then here's all my previous playlists on there. Today what we're going to be covering, because I totally forgot, so we have this whole scene right here. If I scroll down, you can kind of see a little rotated scene here. Actually, I have it here as well. There we go. So we have this scene. So if I go from draft quality to full quality, you'll see the ray tracing kick in. So we're going to be covering this vintage lamp and this arcade, and I think it'll go pretty fast. So probably some other stuff here. So to get some cycles back, I'll go ahead and jump that down to draft quality here. And what else? Oh yeah, ArtStation. So if you want to see more, again, here's the ZBrush 2021 when it's new. If you want to follow along in this scene, and basically I'm going to be clicking on this video here. And if we skip ahead to where I'm working, I guess on that I was working on it fairly late. Some of the stuff's out of order, but here's the arcade, and then finally here's the vintage lamp. So really, if you kind of watch this back at like 0.25x speed, in fact, let's do that. Playback speed 0.25x. You can kind of just go through and see the making of, give or take. So starting out with just a cylinder that we're going to, pull this up and then start doing checkerboard stuff, and then getting this pizza mapped on there is, I think, where we'll start. Oh yeah, we got what do we have? We have Painter, Marmoset, Maya, and ZBrush and Photoshop open today. So a whole plethora of stuff. Of course, any of these you can replace with your poison of choice. ZBrush curve brush end is stretching if you decrease size. For example, braid, is it possible to fix it? Not to my knowledge. One way you can, it's not going to work for a braid. I was going to say if you were just doing like a bunch of repeated objects, basically what we're talking about is, if I go in here and I do a sphere, make Polymesh 3D, and you know what, let's swap out. Let's something obvious. Well, let's take a sphere. Let's go down here to initialize. I'm just going to do a small one. So we're going to do like 8, tab 8, enter. We'll go, yeah, this is good. B, create insert mesh. New, stroke, curve mode, on. Oh, except I didn't hit make Polymesh 3D, did I? Make Polymesh 3D. B, create insert mesh, new. That's what I figured would happen. Make sure you hit make Polymesh 3D. Basically, if you take a shape and then you drag it along a curve, and then as you decrease in size, it kind of squashes the shape, like so. Here, edit. Nope. Sphere. Initialize. 8. Make Polymesh 3D. B. Create insert mesh. New. Stroke. There we go. Open up your curve stuff. Curve mode. So here's our curve mode. It's dragging these along. If you want less along there, you can change that curve step up, and that'll go ahead and make it so they're kind of spread out a little bit. And then of course, you know, you can change your brush size. Just go up here to draw size or tap S on your keyboard. And then as you go down here, if you turn on intensity, it's probably not going to do much because, you know, it's not a brush intensity. But if you turn on size, you'll see it'll go from, let's switch this around. Let's go ahead and flip horizontal or vertical. And then now you're going to see it's going to go from big to small, but it's maintaining the same bounding box. It's just squashing it down while still filling in that bounding box. So if you wanted to go large size to smaller size blobs, you could, here's maybe a hacky way to do it. Let's see if this will work. Sorry, we're already off on tangents. So we're going to go into Plane 3D, Edit, Make Polymesh 3D, and there's other ways to go about this. It's kind of a stupid way to go about it, but hey, let's do it. We're going to go in here to Reconstruct Subdivision until we're just down to just a blank square. Delete higher. B, we want it to be, yeah, this will work. B, create insert mesh, new, and then again, let's turn on something a little brighter so you can see it. Skin shader 4. Curve mode here, and then again we'll do the exact same thing. So curve mode, curve step up a bit. Draw size will dictate the size. So now we've got cards, or what should be cards. Step up. Oh, well, now that's interesting. Oh, it's going that way. Okay, well, I'm just going to capture this from the side then. B, create insert mesh, new. Okay, curve mode, curve step. Oh, it really doesn't not want to do cards anymore, huh? Oh, there it is. Okay, so I forgot. Let's go ahead and turn on double so I don't lose my mind. Display properties, double. Now we can see both sides. So we have all of these splayed out, and we're going to go ahead and turn on our intensity, or I guess intensity doesn't really matter. Size, flip horizontal, tap. So now you can see these are kind of diminishing. So now, you know, let's go ahead and change that curve step down just a little bit here. There we go. So we have a row, and if you wanted to go down the curve, just go in here to our curve depth, curve, that's under brush, depth. We'll embed this to like 0. So now, if we go to any other object here, sphere, make Polymesh 3D, and we're gonna say, okay, I wanna drag out a double. A sequence. These seem to, okay, these seem to be just getting smaller, but they're not getting closer together here. There's something tickling the back of my brain. I guess I'm thinking of interpolate stroke, where you can interpolate, you can probably use stager, but you can't get it to follow a curve with stager. That's a linear interpolation. Well, anyway, okay, so we have this. So let's go ahead and say split mask points. And now we can use these as nanomesh planes. So if we go in here to B, insert mesh, I'm going to turn off curve mode for here. And we're just going to hover over face with our Z modeler brush. Actually, we got to do this. B, insert mesh, brush, create, nanomesh brush, hover over a face, insert nanomesh polygroup all. And so now we can drag out a sphere for every plane, but you see the planes get smaller as they go. So if you go down here to nanomesh, you can say fit. And then that way, as these, and then we can just adjust the size, but they'll still stay proportional. So now After all that, you have a series of planes that you can still manipulate. You can go through and move these planes around however you'd like. But now they do get bigger to smaller, but of course they're more spaced out because it's not like stroke interpolate where it's going from, you can't turn on that one option where it's like, hey, pack them in closer over here relative. These are all, what would they call that? Absolute. So anyway, probably not super helpful, but for what it's worth, that's some stuff. Let's see. Cool. Is there a brush and ZBrush I can use to sculpt on top of details without destroying them? Elasticity brush sometimes does that, but generally speaking, what you want to do is you have details on a form. So you have a sphere, make Polymesh 3D, and you have subdivision history. So if we go through here and we say Control D, Control D, Control D, or hit the divide button, and then we have standard brush. Let's go ahead and just clone this off and say spray noise. So you have details on here, right? Oh, it's like, oh, I want to sculpt, you know, secondary forms under here, but not destroy the details. You can drop this down and you can move or sculpt these out and then go back up. Your details will still be there. The elasticity brush can kind of do that too. It kind of pushes geometry around underneath. But yeah, generally speaking, well, I mean, if it's organic, get your forms done first before you head into details. Would be the craftsman answer. Cool, cool. Is the lighting different than 3? Yeah, so on Marmoset 4, I don't know if the lighting model's different, but they have ray tracing, so that's cool. Utilize a better retopology using ZRemesh. So on my here, scroll down until you see a Willem Dafoe leprechaun. And in here we go through, and it's all broken down by chapters here. So this right here is where we start breaking down this mesh to get more controllable topology. So let me share this to you. Start at copy. And it's not better, it's just more controllable. You may still have to do some cleanup, but at least you can kind of dictate how ZRemesh is going to work. It's basically about polygroups. Same thing for hard surface. If you have nice polygroups, if you have, for example, if we go through here and I don't know, what do I have? Cube, edit. Yeah, make Polymesh 3D. On this one, let's go down to initialize and we'll just hit Q cube here. And again, we'll grab this. I got a skin shader there. I got to remember that. So we can go through here and we're Q meshing around. And I want topology. Well, I have nice edges on here, so I can go in here to ZRemesher, half, it upsize down to 0, detect edges. It'll go through and just redistribute my geometry into pretty nice quads. And then you can actually start going through. You can like hit Control D to subdivide a couple times. You can delete lower. You can go, oh, let's do it one more time here. And then you can do stuff like, you know, B brush. Oh, bevel arc, BBA, and then we can do like a bevel arc. So you just go across here and just kind of round, you know, some of these corners out here. And then you can go through with your knife brush now. So this is new. You can go in here to your knife curve rect. You can go through here and you can rect these things. So we can go through, we can just chop out chunks, and there's knife, oops, not slice, knife circle now, which is cool. But the OG was knife curve, so you can go through here and you can just start, you know, slicing out, you know, shapes like so. So we have this, but again, the important thing is we're putting in polygroups. So if, you know, you do have creases and you do have polygroups here, so you can turn on like detect edges, and keep groups, but keep groups, smooth groups down to 0, ZRemesh. That'll go through and look at your polygroups here. And if you didn't need to keep this polygroup, you can go through and say, you know what, let's merge these, Control W, and we can merge this one now, Control W. And now when we ZRemesh this, because we have polygroups, it'll go through and look at your polygroups and keep them nice and succinct. And you can keep hitting half and see how low you can go. but that's just a way to kind of control it. It kind of falls apart here because, again, this is kind of a weirdo shape and it's trying to keep quads. So, you know, your mileage may vary depending on the complexity of your shapes. But, and again, if it behooves you to keep this polygroup here to avoid that, well, then keep them in there. And then now when we ZRemesh, that'll make sure that these stay somewhat straightish. Hard surface sculpting is necessary to sculpt and not box modeling it. Where can I start? So, well, you know what? I'm just going to keep that open. Google Drive. Hard surface linear walkthrough. Right here. You can check this out. And there's a lot of stuff in here, and there's a lot of different ways. If you scroll down to where you get into the artist examples, the brute force, there's kind of a you know, it is kind of a straddler. Jonas and Mark Kiosk Masons are kind of more brute forcey, and that's just by that I mean going in there, getting your volume, ZRemeshing, and then just using more sculpting to achieve what you want. Down here, we get into brute force to rebuild, so the Mike Nash and the Ben Ert, where they go through and they do a lot of, you know, ZBrush, what's it called? Just getting your idea in the round and then going through and rebuilding, you know, breaking it apart and, you know, getting that functionality and designing and then rebuilding. And then you can just, you know, you can just sub-D model in ZBrush and have mixed solutions. And, you know, any one of these steps doesn't necessarily require just ZBrush. You can get your idea out in ZBrush and then toss it into another program. You can start in Fusion 360 or Moy, bring it into ZBrush and work on it, and then send it back over. Nothing's impossible. There's not a one size fits all. It kind of depends on what you're making. So the more tools you have in your tool belt, the more you're able to look at any individual piece and go, oh, you know what? To recreate this, I can use this, this, or this, and this makes more sense. You know, so you're not stuck. But as far as just ideation, you know, that's just, you know, using ZBrush. Hell, if you want to take a trip down memory lane with me, we can go to the oldest YouTube video I have, and this is always funny too, because I still get comments on these because they got a lot of views because they've been on the internet for 10 years. They added oldest. So this thing, you know, here's the very first video July 4th. Hey, my birthday. 2014. Oops. And even in there, and even in here, I'm saying these techniques are outdated because this video was recorded well before then. So these are just stupid things I was doing at work, going through, and this was the start of that mech helmet that I, you know, sent over to Quixel way back in the day. So this is just me getting my idea out. And again, this was, I don't know the version because I can't see it, but probably the Middle Ages. This was the pre-Renaissance period of ZBrush. So, you know, and again, these are super old techniques, but, you know, you still can go through and, I mean, even way back then, hard surface was, there's tons of ways to do hard surface. So cool. Right on, right on. Process making a 3D model for a game. Losing details and getting low and high poly. I don't worry about, I mean, losing details, I guess the easiest way, if you're just brand new to, you know what, like a good one might be, oh, you know what, it's probably paid for, but I do have the mechanical skull series and also this kind of really old creature production series where I go through and I take, you know, I sculpt out something and I game res it and I UV it and I bake it off. So when you're talking about low res, I don't worry about, generally, I don't really worry about low res at all. You know, I get my high res done. And now while I'm working on my high res, I do think about the game res and how, you know, it needs to be built to be successful in engine, but that's more of an experience thing than a technique thing. So I guess really, I guess maybe when you're first starting out, you get caught up a lot in like, oh, my edge flow and my low res, and that's what you really concentrate on. Right now, it's more about, hey, what am I making? What's my idea? Get that out on the round, start building it out, and then I worry about, okay, what does my low res need to be? Do I need to sub-D model this part? You know, low res I don't generally, and again, I say generally because there are some instances where it is useful to kind of think about your low res in a very distinct manner early, but I won't muddy the water's too much there. But let me go into streaming. Okay, I'll set a chapter for this. Turtle Power, Michelangelo, props, and a vintage lamp here. There we go. Just so I can kind of stay on track a little bit. Matte shadow-like material you can use to make the areas of the subtool with the material applied transparent, masked off during the render. You can make stuff transparent. So if I alt tap this one here, I mean, it's not gonna be like that's what I'm looking for, amazing, but you can go down here. So with any selected subtool, you can go in here to display properties and then BPR settings, turn on transparent shading, say yes, and then now when you render this, it'll be transparent. So you can see, you can kind of see through this, and your transparent stuff is going to be under render properties. So render properties, transparent's turned on. Now if you close ZBrush and open it again, this will be on. This transparent shading will be on. However, probably in your render settings, this will be off. So you got to make sure you go turn this back on, and then BPR transparency is right here. And you can refract stuff and do all sorts of cool things. You know, change your properties here to something more shiny to give it more of a glass look. You know, fill that obviously, but if that's what you're going after. Okay, so here we go. Let's make something a little bit brighter. So the first thing I did is this is one of the rare instances where I needed to be pretty precise. A lot of people, when they come into ZBrush, especially if you're, I don't mean to always pick on these people, but they're always the funniest. If architectural visualization, modular set building person, the first thing you want to do in ZBrush is a bunch of things that ZBrush isn't really built around, which is like, model this thing to the NASA degree and then snap it to these specific things. And ZBrush is more of a, you know, work on an object in the round and get your idea out quickly. So it's not really set up to be super duper precise. So in those rare instances where I need to do that, I'll go into another program, again, Max Maya Model Blender, who cares, and make a cylinder. And then I need to UV this very precisely. So if I go through here, and you know, let's turn off the texture so you can see it's literally just a cylinder. I mean, I guess I could have mapped it to the entire thing and done the Pizza Hut logo stretched to a square, but I figured this might be a little bit easier. It's been a while, so I figured this might be a little bit easier for my brain just to kind of take the cylinder, UV map it out, and then make sure it fits perfectly in here so I can kind of put this logo on here. Now, I didn't really, you know, I didn't even start in here because what I needed to figure out first was, how do I make this part? Well, I went through and I got my reference. Let me close some of this down here. I'm going to keep this open though. Okay, so everybody loves hard surface. ArtStation, what's new? Unique, back. Playlists. Sorry, create playlists. Okay, I need those windows open. So now we have here. So I got a bunch of reference, and I use Quadro. I guess I can load that up too. Let's see. There we go. So I use this program. Of course, I use PureRef too, but when I need things around my screen and I need to actually, because I mean, I have my, you know, I'm talking over here, I'm talking here, and then I got my reference and I got my windows and I have, you know, things I'm keeping an eyeball on. So these are just like individual squares of reference. I can, you know, go through here and I can even make them transparent. I can rotate them. I can flip them horizontally and vertically. I can cycle through them. I can drag out copies of them, you know, and then grab little other areas of things I want to look at maybe. So it's a more modular kind of viewer. So again, pick your poison. There's a million different ways to skin all sorts of things. But anyway, the whole point of this is I have reference in here. So I have these letters that I need to recreate. So I went and looked up a Pizza Hut font. I want to say, is this the template? This is working. Yeah, so I basically picked up a Pizza Hut font. I typed out Pizza Hut. I modified it slightly. I took a couple different images that were similar and tried to lay them out to be like, here's the general spacing and how these little bars are laid out, and basically just recreated it. So typed out Pizza Hut, stroked that, went through probably with just a brush and just went doop, hold down shift, and went and recreated this in different values so that I can select those values in ZBrush and create masks that I can then turn into geometry in ZBrush. So this is the final result, is just me just basically placing this on a square and then me taking this and applying it to a cylinder in your 3D program of choice, in this case Maya. And it really is just a cylinder UV'd, and I think these UVs are probably overlapping. So if I take this, go into UV mode and hit W, yeah. So half UV'd because in the original it's Pizza Hut on one side and then Pizza Hut on the other. And then taking this cylinder into ZBrush, and let me see if I can just drop it in here. So go out of edit mode, hit Control N, and let's go back to import. I'm just gonna grab that text layout cylinder here. Okay, thank you. Yay. So here's my cylinder, and then we have a texture map applied. Now, texture map isn't going to do as much good on this low-res geometry because what I'm looking for now is ways to kind of grab all of these areas. Now, I suppose if you wanted, you could go through and you could slide, you could, even in Max Maya Model Blender, you could go through here and you could build this out using this as a template and just get very, very precise lines. I didn't really have time for that, or at least that's my excuse. So I went in here to geometry, crease. So I can, if you do that and you crease your open border edges, so if I uncrease all and I hit Control D, you're gonna see they kind of average down. So and to avoid that, I'm gonna go ahead and crease those open edges. So now when I hit Control D, I'm getting more resolution, but I'm not, it's not, what's the word? Mushing down. Oh, let me go ahead and link this to y'all. Oh, I did, okay, good. So we have this, and now we're getting more resolution. So as I'm subdividing, and I probably subdivided up to a pretty healthy amount, let's say 500,000. So now we have tons of resolution, but this is still just a texture. So now we need to transfer this texture to my object here so I can start selecting these areas. And that's just going to be a simple matter of going in here to Polypaint and saying Polypaint from texture. Got to turn on MRGB. It's going to keep me honest here. There we go. So now if I turn off polyframe, you're going to see texture is now off. However, colorize, this little paint bucket here, is on. So here is with your polypaint off, and polypaint is literally just colored verts. So it's resolution dependent. If I had tried to transfer that resolution on, this is what it would look like on if I just subdivided it once. So I subdivided a bunch of times to get more verts so that, and again, if I go through here, let's just turn this off and RGB, ZAD, standard, red. So if I went through here and polypainted, you see I'm just really just coloring the vert positions. So I'm just adding an RGB value to every vert, and the more verts I have, the finer my resolution will be. So now it's just a matter of going through here and, well, let's go back to the video. I want to make sure I don't skip something obvious because sometimes I'm smarter when it's not early in the morning. So, oh yeah, we also did this checkerboard. I can show you that in a second. So, blah, 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 make the checkers. Okay, it's a little too slow. Playback speed, let's say 0.5. There we go, checkers, yay. We'll get to that in a second. And then here is our, again, we just, oh, that's right. We need to go through here and we need to polygroup these. So one thing you can try, and I'm just going to get a polygroup for every different value in here. You can try going in here to polygroup, group by color. Raise this up a little bit here. Okay. No. Masking, polygroup, group by intensity is what I'm looking for. Or is it masking? Oh, it must be masking by intensity. Mask by color. So you can mask by intensity. So now if I go up here, let's close some of this down. And I say turn off polypaint and go back to white here. You can see I'm getting a different mask based on the intensity. However, really what I want is a full polygroup for every single one of these things. So I said, you can just unmask this. Although that's an interesting way to kind of go about certain things, not this in particular. So we're going to go down here. Instead of masking, let's see if we can say, mask from Polypaint, or I'm sorry, Polygroup from Polypaint. So we're just going to click that button. And then now, again, if we turn this off, and we turn Polypaint on, you can see it didn't do much. You can probably play with those settings, but I'm pretty sure what I did, sorry, I'm kind of a roundabout way of explaining this, was I went in here to masking, mask by color, mask by Polypaint, and then just dragging on here. So I'm going to drag on here to the black, and then I'm going to say hide colors, and you're going to see I'm getting a mask for just this Pizza Hut. And that's fine, so I'm going to hit OK. And then with this, if I turn off my colorize again, now we have a mask. Probably I could go in here and subdivide and do that again to get a cleaner, slightly cleaner mask, but I think this will honestly be okay. If you just hit Control W, which is just group mask, clear mask, you're going to see you're going to get kind of an aliasing. We can clean this up. If you want to try, you can go down here to Geometry, delete lower, and then go, well, let's just do it. Delete lower, and then Edgeloop mask border. However, actually we won't lose it because it's a Polypaint. And that'll go through and try and give you a little bit of a cleaner cut. However, because there's so much geometry, it's still giving me an aliased look. So in reality, I'm just gonna hit Control W, convert that mask to a polygroup, and then we're gonna go back in here, turn this back on. Let's go back in here to our masking. Let's go ahead and clear our mask. Let's go mask by Polypaint, and we're just gonna drag, oops, let's go ahead and turn off hide colors. We're gonna drag to this kind of grayish. We're gonna say okay. And then we're gonna take this and we're gonna say Control W. So now we should have, when I turn Polypaint back on, 3 different polygroups. Although it looks like, you know what? Let me think. How did I do that? How did I do that? I wonder if I didn't do that one. I wonder, again, this is where I should keep notes. Again, because I'm sometimes smarter, or sometimes it's not that I'm smarter, it's that I edit it to make myself look smarter. So, and there's no editing on live streams. Damn it. So we're gonna go in here to mask by Polypaint. Instead of gray, let's go ahead and do white to mask. Hide colors. Okay. We'll hit OK. And then again, we'll turn this off, and I'm gonna hit Control W. This will work. So now I have 1, 2, 3 distinct polygroups here. Let's turn off lines so you can see just these a little bit better. If you want to change these colors, you can Control Shift click it and then hit Control W to give you something maybe a little bit more obvious to look at here. Something a little less. There we go. Look at that. So now we have all 3 of these distinct polygroups. And now this is where I just start splitting stuff off and giving things thickness, I think. But let's verify that. Oh, okay. So, okay, right. So here's a way you can smooth out those edges, and then I think I just extract thickness off of these if I had to guess. However, what you're going to run into is if we go down here to Geometry, Masking, Mask by Groups Border. So you can say Mask by Groups Border. You can grow that a little bit if you want to. Control Tap to invert that, and then you can go in here to Deformation, Polish by Features, and you can crank that up, and you can see it's going to go through and smooth out all of these lines. However, it's also going to smooth out some of these corners, which depending on your reference, you know, these things aren't exactly smooth, you know, they don't get blobby around here. So I'll tell you, this is how I would love to go about it. And in fact, if you want a higher degree of polish, just make this open circle polish by features and then just tap it, and that'll go through and just polish the hell out of those lines. However, what I probably ended up doing is going into, you can go in here to smooth brush modifiers, and then you can say weighted smooth mode. Go in here to weighted smooth mode and change that to groups intersection, so that's 9, or you can hit the comma key, go in here to brush, elemental PQRS smooth. There's a smooth groups you can do. So what this does is if I go back through my history here to where we have that really super jagged aliased result, you can literally go through here and hold down Shift to smooth, and you can smooth between these transitions, and then I'll go ahead and smooth up to those corners, and then you just, you know, don't smooth around the corners, and you can maintain those corners a little bit better. So that's probably what I did. It doesn't really take that long, and actually what I think I also remember doing is if I turn the line back on, you're going to see that mask kind of transferred to my geometry, maybe not optimally. I can go in here to Z Modeler, hold down Alt, start painting, tap Shift, and then I can just clean up some of this stuff. Again, hold down Alt, start painting, tap Shift, and you can go through here and you can clean up some of these corners too. So if you need a sharper corner, I can literally just go in here and fix these polygroups to get a better result. You can hold Alt and then Shift and just so kind of pixel painting, not super fun. But for our purposes here, what I'm probably going to do is, again, who cares? Mask by features. Maybe grow that mask a little bit. Control Tab to invert. Go down here, polish by features, open circle. Zoop. Boom. Now everything's smooth. And the reason I don't need to smooth that much. Damn. Just tap, tap, tap. And the reason I'm doing that is so that when I ZRemesh, ZRemesher doesn't try to build in all of that aliasing. Because I do want a ZRemesh. You don't have to. You can literally just take this stuff and extract it out and it'll just be a big thing. But as I was going through and thinking about, okay, I need to UV these things and I want something a little more controllable, I like to have nicer geometry to work with. This stuff in between, so if I go through here, so you see I'm Control Shift tapping any of these polygroups to kind of separate it out. I'll go ahead and grab this one. I'll go ahead and say split hidden. So now this is on its own subtool here. This one I was probably least worried about. So in this case, you can just go through here. I mean, hell, if you wanted to, there's a couple different ways you could do this. You can go in here to extract, and you can just say extract, and you can say, yes, just extract my thickness, and then boom, there you go. And that'll extract based on this thickness here, and it'll actually smooth out those transitions for you a little bit more. And then you can just go in and sculpt on this and do whatever you need to it. Probably what I did was run like a ZRemesher, depth size down quite a bit, half, just to kind of get some decent geometry, and then I probably ran a panel loops. If I was guessing, panel loops will give you, I think, a little bit more control. Again, I didn't probably go crazy on this. You know, there's some cleanup that probably needs to be done. But so we have this geometry here. I'm going to go down here to panel loops here. And so there's a thickness, there's a polish. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off just down to 0. Maybe even if I'm really scared, I'll turn that to close circle. But turning it down to 0 should turn it off. So we have this here, and now if I just, just click panel loops, it'll give me thickness, but you can see that thickness is popping out. If I want it to be down the middle, elevation, down to 0, panel loops, and now it'll just give me, it's basically what I'm telling it is, give me 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divisions in between each, and then also give me this bevel profile, just kind of this loop thing. If you want to simplify this, you can, you can even take bevel down to 0, and that'll just make it flat. And or you can even go down here to loops and just turn it to 1, and that'll just give you an extrusion, but put it at an elevation of 0 and just extrude it back. So that's one way you can kind of get this geometry going. And then from here, you could even go in here, now that you have a feature, and a feature can be a crease and or a polygroup border, you can go in here and again, just continue to polish by features if you wanted to. But what I ended up doing, I think, I want to say maybe I did keep the bevel up a bit. And then thickness is kind of fine. And then you do need some loops in order for that bevel to take effect, obviously. So we'll give it 3 points here. There we go. So you can kind of get a nice rounded out version of this. And then you can go through and you can say, deformation, inflate a little bit if you want to, or deflate or whatever, and sculpt and do whatever you need to. But here is that chunky part. And then for these glass parts here, Control Shift tap the letters, go ahead and say split hidden. This is where I wanted to have a little bit more precise geometry. In fact, if we switch over, now that I think about it, we can look at the real deal, Holyfield. So now if I click here, I'm going to hold down Shift and turn off these paint brushes. You're going to see this, you can actually see perfectly. Great. This is actually, I just kept this Dynamesh. So I truly didn't care about that. And then this, I did go through in ZRemesh pretty at a higher rate. And then this, I was much more controlled. This, I was very particular. So I ZRemeshed it and then probably went in and did a little bit of cleanup. But also with thickness, just because it is going to be physically base. I didn't want to do double-sided. So this is going to be actual thick glass. And then this, and then, I can show you this real quick too. So if you have a cylinder, make Polymesh 3D. If you hit W and hold down Alt, you can scale along one axis. So you can shrink this down and then scale it out a little bit. If you want to get rid of these and you just didn't go into initialize, go down here to Edgeloop, delete loops here, and then I can just grab this point here. We can just say transpose point and just scoot this up a little bit. And in fact, let's go in here to slice. I'm not sure this is how I did it, but just off the top of my head, this is one way you can go about it. And then we can polygroup these just by going into polygroups group by normals. And, you know, probably this is going to be a separate piece, so we'll go ahead and split this off. And that's another thing too, is get out of the mindset that like every 3D object you make is all connected and you have to resolve all these weird issues. If it's a separate piece in real life, then separate it out. Don't go nuts trying to make everything one piece when you don't have to, and especially if in the real world it's not one piece, so you're just making yourself have a headache. Insert multiple edge loops, 0 elevation, interactive resolution is fine, and you know, you can look at your reference and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and you know, you'd want to model to your reference. You would go in here to texture import, load it into Spotlight. If I'm ever saying anything where I don't really go into detail, remember you can go in here to Spotlight reference, and there's a ton of things on Spotlight reference. However, there is an actual what's it called, ZPlugin. This is the cool one, Ref Switcher. So this is a plugin you can get. So we'll go in here to Ref Switcher. Used it on Squid Games. And here it is, perfect. So here's Ref Switcher, where I go through and load multiple images, and it just swaps them out and keeps your camera settings too. So I'm gonna go ahead and send this to y'all. Share, start at copy, bada bing, bada boom. There we go. So going through here, and we're gonna say insert multiple edge loops, 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. And then I want to make these checkers, so I'm gonna say polygroup, all polygons, checker, loop. There we go. So now we have, you know, all of these separated out. We want to, you know, space in between them. So let's go through here and bevel edge loop complete. So you can do it one by one. You can just go through here and say, okay, that's my bevel, and then just go around and just continue to do that. If you know how many spans you have, you can go in here, which you probably do if you're paying real close attention to your reference. We can go in here to activate symmetry in the Y direction. Y is up and down. And radial count is at, let's say this is a 32. And then you can go through here and you can literally just bevel all at the same time. So then we can go through here, we can put in a bevel. And then for these to be the same, you can just bevel once and then just tap, tap. There we go. And then now you have the interstitial stuff. Now getting these things out of here might be a little tricky, surprisingly. Let's try this. Let's go in here to Control Shift, select lasso. And I'm just gonna click on these edges here to grab those points here, and we'll go ahead and say split. So now we have our glass, and now we have our in-betweens. And for these, I might have done something like this. I mean, you can even just do this manually. Oh, if you wanted this to be curved, you may want to subdivide first before you split these things out, because that'll get you that nice smooth look. But we can also go through here and do, again, manually, Q mesh. We'll do all polygons here. You know, let's hit Control W, make it all one polygroup. That's fine. So you can actually just pull up a little bit and then go down to the back and then hold down and just pull, say Polygroup Island. Pull through and then hold down Shift to pull this out. And then to keep these nice corners, we can go in here to Dynamic. You can see this is just gonna, you know, smooth everything. We'll do a smooth subdiv of 1, but we're gonna go in here to Q grid. And you know, let's change it from bevel to chamfer. And then now, you're gonna see if I go back here to something like this, we can change kind of that fall off and keep our edges there. So probably I did something like that. And then for the glass, same thing. I probably split these. You know what I might have done? I mean, you can go ahead and just say, you know, and I want all the greens and all the blues, but I don't know, probably something like this. You know, we'll Q mesh out a little bit. Yep. And then we'll Q mesh and just hold down Shift and Q mesh in a little bit. Did I do that right? Oh, we need to change it from island, Q mesh, all polygons. There we go. So here, glass out a little bit, and then again, go to the back and hold down Shift and say Q mesh polygroup all. And I'm just gonna pull in here. So we have glass, we have this, and then we have our Pizza Hut, and then more stuff as we get to it. Get a drink, go back to my comments here. Let's see. Do you still approach characters by doing concept sculpts first? Yeah, I think so. Sometimes I'll jump back and forth between, and actually, now that I think about it, if you go to playlists, intro to ZBrush 2022, what's new, I do a little bit of, I show a little bit of, you know, kind of, you know, here's the quick block out, and then kind of splitting things up and refining and thinking about functionality. And then if I wanted to hop into Photoshop, I don't actually use this method, or as far as like image planes and FBX, but I do go through here and show, let's do this, you know, so if I want to do, kind of figure things out in 2D first, so I've got my 3D concept sketch underneath, and then I want to go through and be like, okay, what do I want to make now? And, you know, kind of taking it out of my 3D space and just kind of ideating in, again, use anything to draw. It's basically just going through and figuring out where I want my other stuff to go. So we'll let this go for another 5 seconds. And this is just refining the blob idea that I had in there. And so then now I have a better idea of what I'd like to do next as I hop back in. And you can do this at any stage. You can blob it out and then draw over it and then work on it a little bit and then do another screenshot, work on it in 2D, bring it back in, and just continue to refine your idea like that. Because you're going to see things in 3D in the round that are going to make you go, oh, you know what? Because if you lock yourself to 3D, you can tend to, I shouldn't say you, me, I tend to spin my wheels a little bit. If I only work in 2D, I don't think in the round very well. Some 2D artists do, and I'm totally jealous. So for me, it's a hybrid approach where it's like, hey, I need to work in the round and design in the round so I can think, you know, about functionality all over, and then I can go into 2D and work out specific things, and then come back into 3D. And then as I refine those specific things, I'm still working in the round, so I can change the designs as needed to fit what I need. And I can also back way out and zoom way in and rotate around and see if everything's working in the round, because that's what the end experience is, the 3D model, not a 2D image. If that is your final, usually what I make is a 3D model that's supposed to be seen in 3D, not something that's supposed to be just seen from the shot. But your mileage may vary. If it's just for the shot, then who cares if it works in the round, really. And it's nice because it frees you up a little bit to take, you know, different viewpoints and get a little more use out of it, but not totally necessary. ZBrush, oh, silhouette of the subtool with the material applied is put in the alpha for a render as black. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I misunderstood. You can just go in here and say, colorize off, make your color black. And if you really don't want to see anything, go in here to flat color. Flat color is going to choose white, isn't it? This is fine. Choose a material that doesn't have a high spec, and then just change the color from white to black. You can also, if you want to just have that always on, underneath preferences, thumbnail, you can turn this on, and there's your silhouette. So as you're working, your silhouette's always there. I believe this is based on if we switch. How does this work? It's been a while since I've background. Okay, so we change our background here, click off, and just change that to black. And then now, yeah, that's about right. So if you go through there and change your background to black, it'll change your foreground to white. So now you have a transparent background, but your silhouette is now white. And I think what happens is whatever you change your background to, it's going to change. It's going to make the complementary color. Yeah. So use that to your advantage too. You can also make this bigger or smaller. Well, good. Keep this at white. You just click and drag this, or underneath preferences, you can say, you know, thumbnail size. You can zoom in if you want to. You can export the thumbnail. You can work on, it can be silhouette, or it can be the actual model if you turn that off. So that's another thing. Nice to see you too again, Monterotor. Would boost mask work in this case? If it's based on, I think, geometry differences where you're boosting by what geometry has changed, then it would. Instead of like growing the mask, you could boost it. But since I was based on just color information, I don't think it would boost to anything. But I think that's just for geometry changes, if I'm thinking correctly. Which is a colorblind mode for polygroups. Oh, you know what? Yeah, a little bit more controllable way for polygroups would be. I mean, one thing you can try. No, that's just color. There is a Z color in here that you could. You can polygroup by polypane, and I think it inherits the color. Maybe not. But you could try that. Somewhere in here is a color, Z color. There you go. And you can set up your own palettes, friendly palettes in here, and then apply color, and then maybe transfer that color to the actual polypaint. But maybe not. UVs, when I import the model 32 Max's UVs gets broken into small squares. I change UVs but still facing the same issue. I mean, that's an easy fix. What can sometimes be happening is if you have under your preferences export, and I'm saying it's an easy fix in 3D Studio Max, but to avoid that, maybe what's happening is if you go in here to, oh boy, I don't obviously go into this menu a lot. Where the hell is export? It's in here, right? Yeah, import export. And then under export here, if you have group turned on, and sometimes when you export OBJs, it'll take your subtools, your polygroups, and if you have a different polygroup, it'll split that off into its own thing. And then also maybe on here there's like a merge UVs or something, or maybe on import on 3D Studio there might be an import option for like keeping your UVs merged. But essentially, if your UVs are right on top of each other, you can just grab all your UVs and then just do a merge with a very small tolerance, and that'll sew them back up for you. So even if it does split them off, you can just merge them back. ZBrush is making a flat extraction and then extraction masked out as he moves. The gizmo creates thickness. How is it possible? Extraction mask out. So a flat extraction, or a very simple extraction, would be like make polymesh 3D. Control D to subdivide a couple times. So we're gonna go through here and we're gonna extract this off. So you can say extract with a very low thickness. So that'll seem like a flat extraction. So we're gonna extract and accept. I'm just guessing. I don't know that I've actually watched it. So you do have two separate polygroups, and there is a slight thickness on here. If you just go in here and move, it's going to move both sides. However, you can see here, if I have Alt F assigned to backface mask. So I have a little indicator in my interface, custom interfaces. If you're new to ZBrush, YouTube channel, of course. This is all in the basics, but you can go in here and be like, how do I do a custom UI? And then there's custom interface and menus. There's probably like 5 or 6 videos on that. Check it out. But we can go through here, and all this really is for any brush, you can go in here to auto masking, and you can do topological, not topological, backface mask. So if your camera can't see it, your brush can't see it. So now when I go through here and move, it's going to leave that alone. And in fact, you could even get fancy enough to go in here to backface mask and curve and flip horizontal. You can set up 2 brushes for that, so it'll actually flip which face it's looking at. But generally speaking, you can go through here with your move brush and add thickness. However, what you can also do is with the gizmo, since you technically do have 2 different polygroups, you can hit W, Control Tap 1 polygroup, and then go through and add thickness. So again, Control Tap, that's going to unmask just that polygroup, and then do whatever you want to this one, like so. I'm assuming. Cool. Avoid pinching between polygroups when you run polish by groups. So if I go through here and I have my polygroup border and I want to say like deformation, polish by groups. Trying to think if there would be a, let me do a slice. This is one instance too, where if I get this kind of geometry, just to get more predictable stuff going on, I'll go through here, do a ZRemesh or half, depth size down, keep smooth groups down to 0, and I'll just get new geometry, just so I can, again, have more. I mean, even this instance, it should, do work pretty well. I polish by groups I don't generally use. I'll use polish by features just because it can grab creases and or polygroups, but same diff. But it seems to be I mean, it is going to pinch, quote unquote, when it has, that's a feature of this feature, is that you can go through here and wherever you have multiple polygroups meeting, it's going to keep those in the same place. So it's not going to average between those. So if you wanted to avoid that, you could probably just do a polish, and that would just run an overall polish. But you may have to, that's where polish by features might come in. So in that case, it's like, hey, ignore my groups. I just want you to, I'm gonna go in here and say, you know, crease edge complete here and here on this edge. So despite my groups, I can go in here, I can hit Control W, make it all one poly group, and then I can say polish by features. And now it's just gonna look at my creasing, and that'll avoid, you know, the hardness between polygroup borders. But again, that's a feature, so I don't know. Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I don't think you can grab thickness from a flat surface. If we go back here, you know, if we have a flat surface like this is another instance where I might just, you know, give me some decent geometry real quick. But then again, Q-mesh polygroup all, you can just pull thickness that way. And then again, if you want to continue pulling in that surface normal direction, just hold down Shift as you're Q-meshing around. And then if you want to put some bevels on here quickly, since you have polygroups now, you can go in here to your Edgeloop menu, and there's a crease bevel width. So if you just use the bevel width, there's no creases. However, if you go in here and you say, you know, crease PG, you can add a bevel this way where your creases are. But even if you just have polygroups, you can hold down Control and you can bevel this way. Or you can use the new Bevel Pro ZPlugin. Let's undo that. And again, even if this was like nasty, let's go back forward. Let's say this is like, okay, we're going to crease PG, we're going to hit Control D a couple times, and we're going to say, you know what, I just want to Dynamesh this result. Maybe a little higher. Oops. Resolution here. Okay, we got a Dynameshed result here. Again, if you wanted to clean this up, again, you can go through here and you can just literally run a deformation polish by features, and that'll smooth those out for you. However, Bevel Pro will actually run that for you as it's beveling. But if you want to do it beforehand, and again, this is another instance where I'm going to say, you know what, polish by features and then ZRemesh, and just give me better geometry, just something better to work with. I do that all the time. But if you wanted to add bevels to this nasty piece of geo, you still can. We can go in here to ZPlugin, Bevel Pro, and we'll pull this in once it's done processing. So if y'all are new to this, you can see, ugh, gross. This is literally telling us, you know, where our the red is. Well, let's do this. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say polish by groups. We're just going to run that a little bit, and that's going to go through and again do what we did previously, which is polish our polygroups. And now you can start seeing, if we go in here to bevel amount, let's crank this up to like 0.5. So the bevel amount is, here's the red line where your bevel is going to be, the blue line is your polygroup border. And if you start seeing some of this geometry sneak through your mesh offset amount, so that's basically how, it's kind of weird, but if we turn on auto apply, here's our bevel, we got some geometry sneaking through. It's actually creating a piece of geometry, and that geometry has thickness that it's booleaning out. So in order to get that mesh offset amount, we need to go up to maybe say 0.5, and that'll allow us to kind of make that Boolean object that you can't see but is there a little bit thicker, so that geometry won't poke through. If we hit OK now, you'll go ahead and get those bevels. If you turn off auto apply and then hit OK, that'll show you the Boolean that it's creating. So if we go to solo mode here and we just look at these two, it'll turn on live Boolean for you. And we have a subtractive mesh here, and well, now that's just doing an awful job. What's going on here? What am I doing wrong? And it basically, if I turn this on, you can see this is the Boolean object that it's creating, and that bevel offset amount is making this thicker. I didn't really explain that really well in my video, so I'm doing it here. It's making this bevel thicker so that it's working. And like I said before, if we go in here to, again, to this extraction, if we go back into Bevel Pro, it should keep our original settings, or the settings we just used, I should say. No, maybe not. Let's do it again. And there's also a fix edges. If you see any gaps in here, you can say fix edges and it'll go through and do like a mesh cleanup. Although that seemed to kind of break it. Polish by groups, fix edges, polish by groups here. And then we'll go in here to bevel amount, maybe up a little bit, and then polygroup angle we don't really need to worry about. Mesh edge resolution is kind of cool. You can go in here, and if we turn on preview edges, you can see we have 4. Let's go in here to mesh resolution of 1, and that'll give us this result. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. That'll go ahead and apply that result, and now you can see, you know, you got that bevel built in on that nasty Dynamesh mesh. But anyway, to see that a little bit better, again, it's this playlist right here, ZBrush 2022, what's new, and down here somewhere is, all right, second video, first real video in there is Bevel Pro. Can you make a character in ZBrush ready for production? Sure, why not? When you have 2 convex planes meeting, yeah, I think that is just using creasing instead of polygroups. Instead of using the groups, use the polish by features and then just use creasing might be better. If you want an object tracking your character rotated as moves, what logic prep? Huh? You're way smarter than I am. I have no idea. Intellect 1, 2, 3. Yes, your intellect far exceeds mine. I have no idea how to do that. Polish by features 2 planes are convex. It ruins the convex shapes where the 2 groups meet. If the 2 planes are convex, 2 planes, delete hidden. So we have a convex plane here. And then, oof, we need to clean up those edges. So this is an instance where those little stragglers will get you. Let's go over here to masking, mask by border, control tab to invert that, and we'll just do a polish by features open circle. And then now when we ZRemesh, it'll ignore some of those stragglers to give us a better result. So now we have a convex object and then polish by features. I'm just trying to get some, I guess I'd have to see exactly what you're talking about. Polish by features. So open circle, it is going to keep those borders hard. It's kind of working as intended. I'm not sure. I use Blender, but I'm not like a master user by any means. Quick question. I imported an STL model and poly painted, but the UV was messed up. I tried to use UV master to make new use of it, but no luck. How can we make new UVs that actually work? You don't have, if you're having problems in UVs working in ZBrush and UV master, it's not a really it's not super controllable. You can UV at anything. Extract shapes that maintain the bevel when it's all the same polygroup. I have a chest plate that I use chisel brushes on, and the trenches are all different depths. I mean, if you're going to use the chisel brush, I would suggest going in here to brush. I mean, especially if you wanted the results to match up, and turn your tablet into a mouse by turning off global settings, going here to Z size and Z intensity, and just cranking this up. Let's go ahead and reset that. Cranking both these up for any sort of chisel brush. So tablet pressure and tablet size, and then use that. That'll make sure that your Z intensity is consistent. You could also, if you really wanted to cap it, go into thick skin and just cap it at a certain depth, but then that's going to create a flat that you probably don't want. Practice with ZBrush tutorials, my way to do exactly what the tutor does in 101 knows a workflow, which feels not the proper way to do it. What do you think? Sounds right. You know, you can go through and do what they're doing, get a feel for how things work, and then probably if you want to challenge yourself a little bit more is do that, and then the next thing you do, pick something else to work on, and then that'll break you out of just seeing and doing, and then you'll have to do a little bit more problem solving on your own. Cool, thank you, Stanislav. We're going to create different AO and how to export it. That would be, let's see here. Do I have something I can have an AO with in my scene? So I want to say ZPlugin. Is that where they have it? Oh, I haven't used this in forever. There should be oh, there it is, Ambient Occlusion. So you can compute Ambient Occlusion in your ZPlugin here to go through, and it'll actually give you, switch the flat color here, you can see it kind of built in AO on your model here. So if you needed to export this, you can just Control Tap to invert this, go in here to color, fill object with black, maybe, unmask, and now you have this ambient occlusion as a texture that you can then export. Of course, you'll either need to bake that result off, in which case you're probably just going to bake an ambient occlusion, or if you needed to have it, your ambient occlusion from a texture, have low res UVs, go down here and just say texture map create new from polypaint. That'll transfer your polypaint to your UVs, and then your AO quote unquote will be transferred to your texture map. Yes, I'm in Austin, Texas time zone, so it's still early here. It's 7:08. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So if I use a cylinder, so if I go in here to cylinder, make polymesh 3D here, and we have skin shader 4, and let's go through here and we'll do a quick group by normals, and then polish. Yeah, polish groups, deformation, polish by groups here, and it's kind of averaging these out. One thing you can do is you can control exactly what this sees. So you can go through here. Let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's do, let's introduce a little bit of noise. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna crease by PG, Control D, just to kind of demonstrate this a little bit easier. And then I'm gonna say uncrease all. So we only have polygroups here. And then I'm gonna introduce a little bit of noise into this entire object here. So it's kind of crinkly. And let's say, you know, we want to polish by feature, polish by groups. Actually, I did a pretty good job. So if it's low res, it'll kind of divot in, and it kind of does. It kind of goes zoop. However, to avoid that, and again, you just want to polish by groups, you could mask. Again, you can just control what it's seeing or what it's affecting. So we can go in here to polish by our groups border, invert that, and then do a polish by groups. However, that's not going to solve the problem. What was I doing? Deformation, polish by groups. So we can just, you know, make these smoother. However, there's still noise here, but you can also try going in here and saying polish by groups and smoothing that out separately. But yeah, it looks like there's just still a little bit of a divot there. Polish by groups. Trying to get it so that it, trying to think of a way that'll get this back to a perfect cylinder. As you can see, there is a slight bulge there. That might be an instance of if you have high-res geometry and you're trying to smooth something out and you're having to jump through a bunch of hoops to kind of get it H-polish and trim dynamic and polish by features, and you're getting these slight warbles, take a step back and go, is this the right approach to solve the smooth result I'm trying to get? And that kind of goes into the armor thing where it's like, I'm using a bunch of H-polish and stuff. Is it sometimes better to go in and be like, hey, let me spend 5 minutes rebuilding this with low-res geo creasing using dynamic subdivisions rather than spending 40 minutes trying to find a setting or trying to go through here and H-polish and trim dynamic and smooth. I'm not saying there isn't a way to do it. Probably the easiest way is to go in here and like clip circle center and just, not clip, clip circle center. And then just clip this to a circle. But again, that's a cylinder, and you'd have to have a perfect cylinder for that to even make any sense at all. So that's another possible option to, you know, get rid of some noise, is just to use the clip brushes. But yeah, I don't know if there's a way to really control that specifically. I could be wrong. In Software Summit videos, I showed their cool hard surface modeling workflow, specifically what they used, creasing dynamic subdivision. Is there a point where they're finished that they have to commit to these creases, or do they use something different? I mean, they talk about it, and that's in that ZBrush hard surface linear workflow I sent out. There's a link to the id Software presentation. And this kind of goes into the destructiveness of some hard surface techniques. And a lot of people, when they see, like, you know, you go through here and you do a sculpt and then you ZRemesh that, and you go through and you do dynamic subdivision, and then you put your details on there. They see that as destructive. However, if you're working at this level of detail with this type of detail, if you were to go through and rebuild this as a sub-D-mesh, or just build it as a sub-D-mesh, and somebody said, hey, I don't like this panel line or these cut-ins, just because it's sub-D geometry doesn't mean it's going to be any easier to go. I mean, sometimes in ZBrush, it's easier if it is just a ZRemesh Kiosk Mason style sculpt to go through here and just smooth out the panel lines that aren't working and remake them much faster than the non-destructive method of sub-D modeling, where you have to go in and kill a bunch of edge loops and support loops and resolving all these surfaces. You're going to spend 90 minutes getting rid of an edge loop, and you can spend 2 minutes getting rid of a chisel cut line. So technically, a chisel brush is more destructive than maybe box modeling, but there is a certain point box modeling reaches where it's destructive as hell. You can use booleans to control that, but then at the end of the day, if you want to apply that boolean so you can bake something off of it, well, that's going to be super destructive, right? And then once it's boolean, now you have hard edges, and then how do you resolve those hard edges? And now I'm going to need to sub-D this. So even booleans are incredibly destructive once you apply them, if you need to apply them, which some cases you don't. You can use floaters, but you can use floaters for a panel cut, a complex panel cut line? Probably not, you know. So depending on what you're making, the least destructive, or maybe just as destructive but faster, is actually brute force. It sounds crazy, but a brute force lazy mouse chisel cut line is sometimes faster, easier, better results, higher quality than doing it the, you know, sub-D way and resolving all that shit just so you have a sub-D model that you can do what with. You have an incredibly complex sub-D model at that point that's incredibly difficult to work with for anybody touching the file. So, but that's, again, depending on the complexity. If something this complex, I don't know that sub-D is going to help you that much. My opinion, but your mileage may vary. Fat cylinder inflated with 2 polygroups, one for top and bottom of the shaft, and you run polish by features on that. Oh, okay. So we can inflate this out. So we can go down here to, yeah, let's just go back. So here's our original cylinder here, and we want a fat cylinder. So one way to do that is to, we can just do a deformer, I suppose, and say Control Alt, and then we can fatten this up. And then we want to polish by groups here, and it'll go through and kind of do this. Let's do polish by groups, close circle. And that'll kind of do that. Yeah, that kind of that divot in. In that case, I may just go through and be like, let's say this was the Dynamesh here. It's like, okay, this is the end result I'm looking for, but it's kind of, I want to go through here and polish by groups, maybe open circle since it's so high poly. Oh, thank you. And so this is the result I'm getting, and I'm not getting the exact thing. Then at this point, I may be like, okay, you know what? Alt-E-M, go into my cylinder, say split mass points. Hold on. Transparent. So instead of fighting it, I may just be like, okay, this is a good instance of me just needing to go through here and just recreate this real quick. So I'm going to hold down Alt and scale it along this here, and I need to add more resolution in here. So just real quickly, insert multiple edge loops. We'll give some more. In fact, we could even do insert multiple edge loops in our active elevation, pull out, and then just round this off. And then now I have this. We'll go ahead and do a group by normals, crease PG, dynamic crease level of 3, smooth set of 4, and now I have the perfect rounded cylinder, but I'm not dealing with a bunch of, you know, 460,000 garbage geometry points, you know, is what I would do if that's feasible. Just consider rebuilding or recreating rather than polishing. Substance normal upgrade. Yeah, exactly. You can, and also, you know, if you're able to pull this off, you know, like John's saying, in the texture, do it there, because then you can go through and erase and do depth and have it on different layers and all that good stuff. So, is there a link to this document? Yes, I'll just keep linking out. For your cylinder, try with unwelding and polish after you fix your wave edges. Yeah, let's try that. So if we have this and we say apply, and we have deformation, polish by features. Nope, we want to add some noise. So we have a noisy mesh here and we want to polish this up. There is a, let's go down here to delete lower. There is a geometry modified topology unweld groups border, and so I'm afraid doing this. So these are unwelded now, so now if I go in here, and I guess polish by features doesn't really matter which one we use. Okay, excellent. So that does get rid of that divot problem. Now I wonder, are these actually unwelded? Let's go in here to brush, auto masking, mask by polygroups. Yeah, okay, so those are unwelded and they are polishing, but they seem to be polishing at the same rate. So now if we go in here and we do weld, geometry modified topology, there it is, weld points. And then let's just do a dynamic so we can see if those stayed. And if some of these points don't grab, you can go in here to weld distance and crank that up a little bit. Yeah, okay, that seemed to work. If you can get those points to stay and you can weld them back, do that. So thank you, Sakura Swan. You win December 2nd ZBrush stream. With my ZBrush mug. Or you can inflate and cut off top and bottom. I think we'll see physically based running on ZBrush. That'd be cool. I don't know. I hope so. That'd be neat. Stay in ZBrush as much as possible. Me too. I like to do that. Okay, so back to here. We got our stuff all separated out. I think we're to the point. Oh, okay. This is another thing too. This is, you know, how would you make a shape like this really quickly in another program? And how I make it is, I don't tend to overthink it. I mean, you can like bridge edges and stuff like this. But if I go in here and I say, I think I did something like this, group by normals, Control Shift, delete hidden, go through here, Control Shift, and we're going to just do a slice because I just need the basic shapes, right? So we're going to go in here and we're going to say inset, polygroup all, we'll do legacy. So this, and now I need to like bridge these across, but you can also go in here and you can do a slice curve and then hold down spacebar, do brush radius, and you can literally just slice across here to get these polygroups. And then, you know, what polygroups do you need to keep? You know, this one and this one and this one and this one, and then delete hidden, ZRemesh half, depth size down to 0, and let's go ahead and turn on X symmetry. Let's do a quick mirror and weld there. And that'll just kind of rebuild that geometry. It kind of did a weird thing here, but we can just slide that. So a lot of times what I'll do is just get, and we don't even need that, insert single edge loop, hold down Alt. And if you want it back, just go back in here, insert multiple edge loops, specified elevation of 0, keep polygroup, and then just boop, pop one right down the middle. So that's another instance of, instead of going through here and figuring out exactly what I need. I just use ZRemesh to kind of go through here, QMesh, polygroup all, get the basic shape, and then do what I need to do, as opposed to having to massage a bunch of stuff. Back to the video. Yeah. No, the chain. I mean, chain and the wire and stuff is all pretty self-explanatory. And cover it real quick if you want. So that's just basically I guess we can start here. So you want to make a chain. One thing you do is go into Ring 3D. That's a little heavy for a repeating object. So I'm going to go in here to initialize. We'll say maybe 8, and 8's a little low. Let's crank that up a little bit. I like to keep, let's say 824. Make Polymesh 3D. I'll do an extender in here. You can control and then control drag up or down and get what you need to, but so we have a line right down the middle. We can go through here and we can use the extender and we can just go yoink, and then there's my chain. If I want to beef it up a little bit, I can go in here and I can inflate or deflate. To test this out, let's go ahead and hit Control W and say uncrease all. I need this to repeat, right? Well, if I repeat it now, it's going to look like this. So what I'll do is I'll control drag up a copy, hold down shift and rotate it. And now I have these two pieces, and we'll put those, nudge those right in there. And then I'll go ahead and control drag this out. And now when I continue up, it'll just repeat as expected. Now you could turn this into a brush. So like B, create insert mesh, new, do we still have our stroke open? Nope. Stroke, curve, mode. So you could do this. You could go through here and you could make a chain brush, but now you got to go in here and finagle like curve step. We need to probably maybe 0.75 just to get those to kind of those chains to fit. So now you have a chain brush. So the first thing I'd just recommend you to do, so you never have to do this again, is go brush, select icon. There you got a little chain brush, brush, save as. We're going to save this right into our ZBrush 2022 ZBrushes IMM test chain. So if you ever need that chain brush again, just hit the comma key, go into brushes, go in here to your underscore IMM custom folder, and somewhere in here, I've probably done this a million times, here's test chain. Double click that and now you have chain brush. However, what I ended up doing is, because this is just literally a hanging chain, was going back in here to our working file, right? And we'll say append that chain mesh here. And we'll just rotate this here. So if I need a chain coming out of that little thing we made earlier, you know, what size do you want it? Great. And then I'll just control drag out until it kind of touches, and then there we go. So now we have a hanging chain that I don't need to use an IMM brush and snap the line or anything like that. And then of course for the wire, that's just a simple matter of appending a Z-sphere, and then you don't even need to scale it correctly. You can even have different size Z-spheres if you want, but append a Z-sphere, E to scale, W to move, and Q to draw. If you want to, you can hold down shift as you're making these. So let's just go up a little bit. So here we've got a wire going up, and then we're gonna hit Q and kind of start pushing these through, or you can just hit Q and just make a bunch, and then you can go through here and just kind of snake this through. If you grab the joints individually, it'll just move the joint. If you grab the bone, it'll move the hierarchy past that joint. So there we go. So that was just a simple matter of, you know, going through here and making geometry. And then past this point, of course, if you hit A, by default, it's just going to turn this into a Dynamesh, but go down here to adaptive skin, turn density down to 1, Dynamesh off, and now you've got just nice-ish geo. We can say make adaptive skin, and we can go through here and we can say append that skin Z-sphere. This Z-sphere we don't need anymore. So now we have this geometry. I think honestly what I ended up doing is, because this was more of a flat thing, was I went through here, I hit Control W, make it all one polygroup. I'm gonna go ahead and grab, you know what, let's do a quick polish by features open circle, just kind of smooth that out a little bit. We'll inflate it back up. Control Shift, drag over this, and go to the top, and Control Shift Alt, sorry, and then delete hidden. And then if you wanted to pass like a bike chain down here, you can go in here and say polygroup, polyloop here, tap Alt, grab these two, delete hidden, stroke, frame your polygroup border, BI brush insert, military M bike chain, and then just tap, and that'll put a bike chain right down that path. So if you had a wire you wanted to follow that path, you could do it that way. What I think I ended up doing was something like this, where it's basically like, you know what, let me just do another quick, now leave it that way. Q-mesh, all polygons, because these wires are actually a little flatter, and they have a little morph target, give me a break. Morph target, delete morph target, don't know why that was on there. Flip, it has a little divot down the middle, so I did something like, you know, bevel, put a bevel on here, and then maybe insert multiple edge loops, keep polygroup here, and then maybe, trying to remember, you know what, let's do interactive elevation. Let's see if I can't push this in a little bit here, and then I could even go through here and kind of pull these out a little bit. So I kind of had, like, you know, those two wires, and I probably went through here. This is probably what I did. Bevel edge loop complete. I probably put a smaller bevel in here, and then I did an inset in here, and then I did a Q-mesh polygroup all, and then hold down shift and just kind of squeeze. So now when I hit D for dynamic, I'll have a, you know, that little double wire in there that's kind of snaking through my stuff. And if you did need to tweak it, if it got a little too smooth, just remember you go back in here and, oops, turn off backface mask and unmask. What is going on? Oh, we have mask by polygroups up to 100. My knee-jerk reaction is always to blame the program. What is the program doing wrong? And almost always turns out that I'm being silly. And Q, Alt W, there we go. So then you can go through here and just modify this as needed. Something like that. Sounds right. Yep. Okay. Doom. Oh, okay. So this was taken through Substance Painter. If you want to look at my UVs. So we have black. I have this broken up into 4 different materials because I wasn't sure if I needed to treat them with separate settings. Basically, if I put it all on one material, then I have to kind of juggle settings based on one shader. But I figured since it was glass, probably I was going to separate all these out. So here's the vintage lamp. This is all one. So if I go through here, you can see that this has a couple different brass and metal on here, and even the wire is all in one. This is all one material, but it's like metal and plastic, so that's a little bit safer. The glass I have on separate materials, just in case I needed to tweak those settings separately. It seems, I mean, well, let's see, vintage lamp here. I don't think I did anything super out of the ordinary. Iron, pewter, bronze, plastic, roughness breakup, and that's just usually just like a roughness map. So if I hit C to cycle through, just kind of a little bit of a overall roughness breakup, and then just a simple dirt kind of dropped on there all over, and then that's the result here. And then I exported all this out. So file export, grab your textures, and then just imported these into Marmoset here. And then again, you know, this is the full draft quality off. If we go in here and we say full quality, that kicks on the ray tracing. So now you're getting, you know, all the shiny bits. So basically the materials were all brought in here. And you know what, now that I think about it, I think I did do some trickery in here. So if we go in here to the vintage lamp, yes. So I can, everything's kind of packed into this node here. So we actually have a character light put in there. This isn't a bulb, that's literally just a light from Marmoset put in there. And then that's based in here. And then I think what I did, so if I double click these, in order to get this to work, let's see if I can remember. I tricked it. So I basically, instead of, if I turn off the emissive map and I tried to make it just purely like, hey, have a light shine through this material, I found myself playing a little bit too much with, was it diffusion or transmission? Something in here where I was trying to make it like translucent glass, and it was just, I don't know. I'd found it was easier just to go in here and drop the emissive, just put an emissive map in there and then use this to kind of dial in how much light's getting through the object, quote unquote, although that's not really true. And I may have even gone in and made it so that the emissive map, I maybe painted this in Painter, so you can see up here the emissive map isn't so strong where the light would be blocked, you know, from going up here to this glass as much. So I went through and painted this a little gradient darker, and then this a little gradient darker, and then over here in between the glass, you can see as it gets closer to the metal here, it's that emissive starts falling off. I think that's how I controlled that kind of glowing through the glass look. So it's not physically correct, but it was a little more controllable overall for the look I was going for. There we go. So yeah, the emissive intensity, and it's actually got a little metal in there on the red. How about that? There you go. That's the entirety of the pizza sign, I think, and a bunch of tangents today. Yes. Did you use quick UVs from UV Master or something else? I probably use a combination of UVs and then just Maya UVs. Trying to remember if I had anything specific. Let me see, file. We can take a look through. Props. Body, skateboard arcade. Oh, I don't even have it. Well, easy enough. File, new scene, don't save. I always have a backup because I have to export, right? So we're going to go in here to streaming, Turtle Power, Michelangelo, props, bake. Cylinder ref, Z tool. Oh boy. Bake. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Vintage lamp. Low. Yep. So let's take a peek under the hood. Here's my UV layout for the letters here. I would assume probably, I'm trying to remember, this is just auto UV because I really didn't give a crap. And then this stuff, these I didn't care too much about, and I was going to I actually ended up packing this glass together, obviously. But for these letters here, if we just take a look at them, what I probably did, I mean, you could do this in ZBrush just as easy. You basically, what you would have is you'd have a polygroup down the middle, and then you could have front and back polygroups, and then you just say UV master, polygroups turned on, unwrap, and it would do a fantastic job. I was a little bit more fancy in here, where basically just the back faces were UV'd, but it's a simple matter of just UVing, going through here and cutting, and then just UV relaxing, and then packing, calling it a day. I could have rotated the letters, but I'm not going into Photoshop often, so I didn't really care that much. How did you separate material for the eyes? That I can send you to a better, I think I'd call it out here. There, James. We'll go to James's page, and time lapse. Where's this one? Lighting, shading, and rendering here. Just follow along with this, and you'll be good to go. Total time start to finish for the entire thing. Gosh, not too long. I mean, you can see the making of most of, well, it's not entirely true. A lot of the polish happened after the fact, but I think for the entire scene, if I was to sit down and just work on this as my job, start to finish, I would give myself, I guess a month. That's easy to say because I did do a little bit of investigation with, you know, the materials and the animating materials and learning a little bit of stuff, new stuff in here. So if I was to do this again, you know, if I was to do another Ninja Turtle, another arcade, and another different type of lamp, I'd say a month would be fair. Learning all this stuff, maybe a month and 2 weeks, 6 weeks. Yes. Pack the UVs together. Yeah, the UV packing I did in Maya. This stuff, these are all painted on, so you can actually see in the video here. Oops. Somewhere in here I do, you know, this, and again, once you know the basic techniques, you'll be able to go through here and see exactly, for instance, how I did the little twisty or the little ties on here. So yeah, here's a helix cylinder that I just deleted half of. This, I probably wouldn't do it this way anymore, but drag those on. This is just Z-spheres geometry unwrapped, and then Substance Painter applied. So, and of course these I stole from this AM/FM cassette thing I stole directly from. If you go to my ArtStation, actually, it would be what, Pavlovich ArtStation Intro to ZBrush. I did a series for ArtStation where we basically made me as a kind of a teen, early teen, and one of the things we made was that that thing. So if you have ArtStation Learning, you can go and learn Intro to ZBrush from there too. A lot of options. That's a pretty intense one too. I think that's like 12 hours. Model a high amount of armor or clothing. Do you merge all the clothes to the body before importing low, high poly to substance? Kind of depends on how I want to juggle. Probably I'm going to have the clothes on its own material because the body is going to have a skin shader and the clothing's probably not. And the skin shader is probably going to have a few more parameters than clothing. Kind of depends on your pipeline though. That's not a true blanket statement. Unwrap, grade the low poly with the normals, or do you just use Vertex Paint and Marmoset? I baked. I did all my baking. I mean, you could do either, but I think I did all my bake. I just threw everything into Substance and baked it and textured it and then exported it into Marmoset to render. But you could do your baking in Marmoset for sure. Would you ever switch to the VFX industry? I wouldn't be against it. I don't know if they'd be interested in having me. For sure, for sure. Okay, so that's that. We still got some time, so let's keep going. Okay, so we're gonna go back. Yeah, oh, yep, you. So let's try and find the skateboard. You know, you can basically see me making that on. And this is actually, the skateboard is a good example of what we were talking about before, where it's like, okay, oh yeah, here's another good example of me being not lazy, but just being like, okay, how do I make this complex shape? Well, I'm just going to clip the shape of the object out, and then that's going to give me this overall shape, ZRemesh it, extrude it, and then instead of being like, okay, how do I box model this perfect, weird, complex shape? Well, I got a nice clean extrude, but I'm going to go ahead and Dynamesh it. I'm going to use trim on here. I'm going to just kind of use clay brush and H-polish to get this weirdo shape, start putting my pieces together, and now that I have the weirdo shape blocked out, Z-spheres, go through and put those points exactly where I want them, so that when I'm done doing that, I've got, you know, here's my original sculpt right here. Here's my rebuilt one. The rebuilt one was it boring? Did it take me 5 minutes? Yes. Did I have to mess with a bunch of ZRemesher settings trying to get it to follow exactly what I want to save 2 seconds? No, it was faster to go in and go, hey, these are where I want my points. It took me 5 minutes to do. I can crease exactly where I want, do a dynamic subdiv, so I have a nice subd mesh of this very complex hard surface without having to fight settings on tools. So sometimes, again, and this is brute force rebuilding, but it went faster and I got the results I wanted. So pick and choose your battles there is what I'm trying to say. So that's just a subd mesh now, and then go in there and then, you know, just making wheels. You guys know how to do that. Inset, blah, blah, blah. And then this is, again, just exporting all these out with these UVs. And then just dragging and dropping, and this is just the painter process of dragging and dropping tiling materials and alt dragging these little paint stamps on there. And that's just, I don't know if we've talked about this, but if we go in here and I say, you know, I want to put a handprint on my black glass here. If you hold down Alt and drag that on. That'll face it to the normal that you dragged it on, and then you can just move this handprint around, and then you can move, scale, and rotate it. Yeah, up here, so W-E-R. So now someone smacked it with a paint hand there. And if you ever want to do nicer renders in here, remember you can always send it on over to iRay. I don't know if your glass transparency settings, it should follow through. I don't know if there's something special I need to do there. It's been a while since I've done iRay glass rendering. Yeah, you may have to mess with some of the, oh boy, some of these settings in here. Where is it at? No, it'd be under the shader. Refraction, absorption, something in here you may have to mess with in here. But you can see we have that paint on there. And of course, we can go through here and we can say, gimme, instead of panorama, I like to do a Bonifacio. And we'll go through here and we'll go ahead and say clear color. There we go. So now we have a different lighting scenario. We got our handprint smacked on there, and we're good to go. And then we'll go out of iRay. Oops. Did I lose it? There it is. There's a way to use the new USD export for quick look dev in Katana. I know of any methods besides having to import into Maya, export Alembic. Thanks. I haven't done it. Probably. I'd have to just try. Off the top of my head, I'm not completely sure. I'm trying to remember if there was something that I'd seen someone else do on a YouTube channel that something's tickling in the back of my brain about that, but I just have to give it a shot. Can you show something about making knots? Yeah, I mean, I do kind of have, let's close this out. I did make some knots in here, but I will tell you a secret. You know, this knot right here and this knot right here, these are all fake. So those are basically, if we go into ZBrush here, let's go ahead and put this back to draft. Go into ZBrush. And I'm just going to grab a cube. I'm going to make a knot real quick, split mask points. And we'll go through here. We'll say insert single edge loop. We'll put one here and put one here. And you know what? Probably let's just Q mesh U and U. It's a little bit sloppy on those corners, but that's okay. So we'll go ahead and say crease, dynamic, and we'll say crease, edge, alt here. So here's, and we'll do a crease level of 2, smooth tip of 3. So here's one part of that knot, and here's the other part of that knot. And not exactly, but that's essentially, you know, if I go through here and say U, Control Shift A, split, hidden, go to solo mode, it's essentially something like this. You know, I'll have more geometry in here so I can, you know, insert multiple edge loops, keep polygroup, and give myself a little more to play with here. But essentially that's it. It's all just faked knots. Same thing with the wraps. The wraps are all faked. You can actually see that in the making of, when I'm making the wraps, I'm just slicing through. And it's more of a pick and choose your battles type thing. It's like, could I have made a wrap that actually is one single piece wrapping around the entire thing? Sure. But unless I'm going to go through and simulate that wrap coming off at some point, it's so much faster to just go through and slice and get wraps. And when you look at the final result, you know, they look good enough, like they're wrapped around the object, you know. So we got hand wraps and we got arm wraps here. Same deal. Do they actually wrap? Do they actually tie in knots? Could you unravel this? Nope. But it's the illusion of wraps is what I'm going for, I guess. If you did want to tie an actual knot to have the most control, I'd probably do that in, or if you wanted to do, you know, tie a bike chain in a knot, it would be the exact same thing we did earlier. Z-sphere, oops, you know, append the Z-sphere so we can knot something in here. But you're going to see, I'm going to show you two ways to do it, and you're going to see one way is way faster and easier and get you the same result as the real way. So Q, hold down Shift, and again, if I mess that up and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm making things all different sizes, no problem. Just go in here to Stroke, Curves Helper, say Z-sphere scales to draw size, and that'll make them all the same size. So you go through here and you can literally use this to tie. I can just Q, and it's like, okay, we got this one, and we want this to kind of go up and over and around, etc., etc. And next thing you know, you might have some sort of knot that you've tied, and everything's beautiful. And then again, you can use that like we did for the chain. You can use that to as a path for your bike chain or whatever you want to tie in a knot. Or you can literally just use this geometry. So if I'll move this in here, blah, blah, blah. So here we're tying stuff in knots, right? And we're going to go down here. I'm just going to use my custom menu density, down, edit topology. Let's make adapt to skin, append, skin Z-sphere here. So here's our knot, Control W. I'm going to do a quick polish by features and then inflate. So here's things tied in a knot, and then there you go. However, you're going to see what the end result ends up being like on a shoe is just the top part that you can see. So in this case, you can actually go in here, you just grab a ring. This is what I did in my buffalo, if y'all remember that. So all those buffalo things, those stitches were probably just half rings, probably not full rings, but I'll show you how a full ring is just as good. So if you want to go in here and add your knot or control drag off a copy and put this one here and just move it out and use your move brush, you know, that is essentially what a knot's doing. Do you need to actually tie a knot, or can you just take two rings and offset them and move stuff around in 2 seconds and get a knot look? Depends on you, but I take the easy route. Fan of Z-spheres or modeler, which one is easier? I use both. Depends on what I'm making. Ornate helmet plate for Nubia. Are there any tutorials relevant up to date that I should look at? I think they're so different. Ornate helmets. Bas Relief is awesome for that type of stuff. It's kind of destructive, but the ability to go through here and like project or use alphas to take something and project it is pretty awesome. So Bas Relief is good for details. These aren't super new techniques, but you can load up your relief alpha. Stop playing. This one here. Oh, I don't even have. This kind of goes through, you know, blocking out the model. Again, when you're talking about like new techniques, this is a very old model, so not super new, but just different ways. You know, Bas Relief would have come in great on this type of thing here. I can just sculpt out a lion as opposed to doing it all manually. What else did I do? You can model and then you can insert and then snap to surface and all that good stuff. But yeah, this is basically a bunch of ornate techniques and IMM brushes and recreating this stuff. So I don't know. I'd have to, for new techniques, I'd have to sit down and actually do it and be like, okay, how would I do this now? I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know if anybody has that. I'm positive someone out there has done a ton of armor stuff. Ornate armor and ZBrush Gumroad. It's got to get you something, I hope. If not, I need to just quit my job and just start making videos. Sculpting through brute force, trying to finish work smarter, harder is tiring. Yeah, and when it comes to ornate, actually, speaking of, I mean, God, let's just look at some examples. Because some of the stuff is just going to be, and that's basically, you know, going through and breaking down a problem. So I'm going to go through here. Let's look at some ornate stuff. So here at the British Museum, this is a really good example of, okay, how would you go about making this? Well, you break it down into simple component shapes, and probably what I do is go in with a Dynamesh block, trim or knife out the silhouette, maybe trim or knife these curves here, and then get me some polygroups and ZRemesh it to get the overall shape, and then maybe you know, mask and extract and then ZRemesh this shape and then go through. And by the time I'm done, this one complex object is really just a series of like 40 or 50 kind of simple objects. Now, when you get into the ornate stuff, where it's like, okay, how would you go through and do this? Man, probably just a brush and a lazy mouse. I mean, if you have a perfect, you know, stamp from Photoshop, great. Probably you don't. So it's just going to be a matter of, you know, there's no free lunch here, I don't think. You know? So there's going to be some ornate stuff that's like, oh yeah, here's an elegant technique of going through here and squeezing down a cylinder and rounding it off and Z-modeling it, and then, you know, maybe just booleaning that in and dynameshing and smoothing the transition. But for this stuff, hell man, it's probably going to be brute force. You know, this kind of ornate stuff too is like, okay, look at the overall shape. So build the big shape, build another big shape separately. It doesn't have to be connected. Okay, get you a nice clean transition. This stuff, oh my God. Yeah. You can break it down into smaller problems. You can try to find elegant techniques that'll be less destructive as you work to make your life easier. But when you get into this stuff, paint it on there and just put on your favorite episode of Star Trek Voyager. I'm a Next Generation man myself, but I'm trying to go through and catch up on Deep Space Nine and Voyager myself. But yeah, if you want to do ornate, have fun. Good luck. Let's see here. Any more ornate stuff we can break down? Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this could be a simple, but even then, when you get into ornate that has wear, it's like you can start like with a simple cylinder, and then you can go through and, you know, subdivide it a bunch of times, and then every other polygroup you can go through and extrude and get this kind of sawtooth look. But then you're gonna have to go through with like a trim dynamic and just kill that detail where you want it. Or you could do this in the texture, but you probably are gonna have to UV this in a very specific way so you can tile that sawtooth down, a single direction. Ooh, and then go through and burnish it up a little bit. But yeah, ornate and brute force. Name a better combination. Yeah, make this without brute force. If you can do that, that's probably, you know what? Your answer probably is machine learning and AI. It'll do it brute force. It'll just do it faster and better than you. But we'll get there. Probably in my lifetime. All that stuff will just be done by a machine. So 2 has 3 polygroups. So I mask a part of 3 polygroups as a hotkey, so it masks the whole area of those 2 polygroups. Yeah. I think there's a plugin that'll do it if I understand the. Let's see. Make Polymesh 3D. Control Shift. Hold on. Control W. Control W. So in this instance, if I want to mask multiple polygroups, I'd probably go in here and just say mask polygroup all, U, and Control Tab to invert. So I just unmask those polygroups and then, you know, do what I need to them. So that's a fast way to just mask out separate polygroups, as opposed to, you know, you can control tap a polygroup to select it. But you can also just use the Muller to go through and just grab mask and control tap to invert that. But I think there is plugins that'll like mask as you hover over, but I think that's the same difference. Personal preference for that skateboard, why Z-sphere over Maya retopologize, for example? Because I don't have to go, okay, I need to go into Maya. Okay, is this too heavy? Do I need to decimate it down? Do I need to export? Do I need to import? You can hit Go Z, does Go Z work? Now I'm in Maya, okay, let me blah, blah, blah. By the time I've done all that, I'm already halfway done with my Z-spheres. Now, I might be a little faster in Topo Gun or Maya retopology. But again, by the time I get in there and start, I'm probably finishing up with my Z-spheres. And then even if it's a wash, even if it's like, oh, I'll get it done faster in here. Well, if you also add the import-export time, both sides, you know, if you're doing something complex and it's faster to do another program, sure. For a just an object with 5 million polygons sitting there, Z-spheres goes really fast once you get a feel for it. So it's usually a wash for me to go outside of ZBrush for most of that stuff, if I'm being honest. If I need to be very specific on something complex, then yeah, maybe using, you know, Maya topology tools or whatever you want is up to you. Until Gentile, you can say switching room Team Blue seems like it could be a better for ZBrush performance. Guess we'll see. But probably not. I mean, it would have to be a substantial switch as opposed to an incremental something that's going to be leapfrogged in a couple months, you know. Cool. Thank you, John. Ornate stuff separately and use your projections. Oh, that's another thing too. I don't think I've updated my rig in a while, but I do get that question occasionally. Workstation. Yeah, I think this is the latest one. So in the description of this is the specifics of hardware stuff. So if you're into hardware stuff, it's all down there in the notes there. With scanning, get that etched in detail. Sure, yeah, absolutely. You know, photogrammetry and LiDAR and stuff will get some detail, and some of it gets amazing detail, some of it not so much. Certainly it'll get you primary and secondary forms, and then you can go in and like clean it up. And if that's the case and your ornate stuff is kind of already dialed in, you just got to go in and use a little bit of pinch, use a little bit of polish, use a little bit of clay to kind of make it really tight. Then that'd definitely be the way I would go. That would certainly speed up your workflow. And in fact, I tried to do, I mean, it's behind glass, but I tried to get multiple shots of some of this stuff too, so that I could try and, you know, these could be easy photogrammetry projects. This one wasn't behind glass, luckily. But, you know, if I wanted to, you know, I could even try to, I think I'd get a pretty terrible result, but I could photogrammetry this, and that'll get me at least the primary, maybe some of the secondary forms, and it would apply the texture on there, so I would know where most of that stuff needed to end up going. So that could definitely speed you along. Even a crappy photogrammetry result with a texture applied is still kind of useful if it gives you a halfway decent result. Good starting point anyway. Yeah, AI-based remeshers, machine, yeah, they're coming. I can't wait, kind of. If they get real good, then they probably won't need me. I don't know. I'll just walk the earth then. You put a hole through Geo on a near final piece, something with several levels of subdiv with all the details finalized. Probably a Boolean. I do have, I knew that was going to come up when we were talking about, here in my playlist, this ZBrush 2022, what's new, knife. So in the knife, they have the new knife circle. And as soon as you see knife circle, oops, playback speed. As soon as you say knife circle, the first question out of everybody's mouth is going to be like, how do you slice through a mesh? And well, you can't knife through a mesh, but there's a bunch of how to poke holes through your mesh techniques. So I'll just start here. Share, start at, copy. So there's a bunch of hole poking techniques in there from that point. Detail, Rust copy details, made them in the alphas, use them as a mask, and insert them into the handle. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and again, if you can do nice alphas and apply them, even as a displacement, if you have nice UVs and you know exactly where to do that in Photoshop or whatever. And also, you can, if you have that much work already done, consider just applying it in the texture if that's feasible for you. You can use these spheres to create a stroke path, place it, maybe place an IMM and finish the second cloth brushes. Yeah, you can use these spheres and then you can pass, you can just use an IMM brush that's kind of just a wide piece of fabric, and then it'll just brush fabric depth, or you can just be a flat plane. There's a flat plane in here too, because you can always add depth later, brush curve, flat. So again, if you wanted to have a Z-sphere path and it would follow that Z-sphere path for cloth, let's say, and then again, let's go ahead and let's do this. Let's say subdivide this a bunch of times so we can go through here with our pinch brush. Not a bunch of times, but we'll go in here to dynamics, turn off gravity and floor collision, and then pinch. We'll go down here to elasticity. So any brush in ZBrush you can turn on simulation. So then you can go through here and you can, like, you know, get this cloth to do what you want to do after it's following the path. And or see add here. It's like, okay, I've got cloth and these are the kind of shapes that I want on the cloth, and then I'll use my pinch brush with simulation to kind of dial in a little bit more of that cloth look. And of course you can also go in here and do, you know, firmness and or go in here and drop down your resolution. This is all ZBrush 2021 what's new stuff for anybody wondering what all this cloth stuff is. But that's how you can get cloth to follow a curve, and then also turn in the cloth. Now, when you go to add thickness to this, since I like to, if I'm doing cloth with wrinkles on it, I don't necessarily want thickness on that cloth. I guess one way to do it, you can go through here and you can say extrude polygroup all. There is a way in my videos where I talk about like doing dynamic thickness mixed with segments to get this for you automatically with a little bit of math. But the one way to do it is we can go through here, we'll just say flip. So now we have cloth with thickness, and then if I need to reconstruct, I can go in here and I can say, okay, insert single edge loop. So here's one subdivision. So if I hit reconstruct, it'll reconstruct back. However, here's two subdivisions, reconstruct, reconstruct. Here's, I'm just putting a line in between all these. Here's three subdivisions, 1, 2, 3. So here I am back to my original, and here I am back with my detailed cloth with thickness with reconstructed subdivision, for what it's worth. That was the British Museum. So we have British Museum, and then I went to the Natural History Museum. So here's just the museum-y stuff. And then here's me for my my tired ass face. And then here's the Natural Science History Museum, and here's some cool stuff. Here's the early humans. How cool is that? Neat, neat, neat. Dodo bird. Maybe photogrammetry this. It'll give you a good start. I got reflections on the glass though, so it may not work great, but yeah, we'll see. My phone's LiDAR is really that good. If it is, I'll get one. I haven't tried it. Yes, and yeah, you're exactly right. All of us are a little bit of AI and a little meat package. Is it worth applying wood alphas to get game ready wood assets? Is it better to just work on the edges and ZBrush and drive all the small details of texture? I found super detailed sculpts noisy. Absolutely. Unless you're 3D printing something, I much prefer, if it doesn't break the silhouette, I much prefer just working in. I guess we can go through that real quick. It was giving me a weird issue loading up. I wonder if it's been fixed. Wait for it. Yay, file, recent. We gotta have it in here. Perhaps accessories. Really? The one thing. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so instead of, you know, because you can do it, you can take an alpha with wood alpha, and like there's even a surface noise you can go through and do. However, and this is all one material, by the way, or one material assigned to this, so I only have one texture set. There we go. So you're going to see here, instead of going through, again, even these, you know, scratches on the surface and stuff, if they don't affect the silhouette, then I just put it in the texture. Like the big stuff, like this whole back half is sawed off. Well, I can't do that in the texture, so I need to do that in the model. But if it doesn't break the silhouette, then yeah, it's much less destructive and a little bit more controllable, and much easier to say, because if you were to model this in 3D and then you needed to get your albedo to line up with your model, like, oh my God, that'd be so many hoops to jump through. As opposed to, I can literally just go in here and say wood, drag and drop, and then now I have wood, and then I can go through here and adjust, you know, how much. I can go through and rotate that wood, and then what attributes do we have on here? Fibers, layers. I can go in here to the height, and I can dial down the amount of wood grain showing up at the same, you know, I can go through here and I can change the color, and the color will match up with my model or my details, because obviously, ooh, look at that. That is a nice, nice polished. Now, if you did want this to be, well, no, I'm doing opacity, so that I would have to put in a height blocker layer, but you get the point. There we go. Easy wood applied. Now, the problem is if you did need to 3D print this out with a wood grain, well then, yeah, you can try to export this as a displacement and then apply that to your model. But at that point, it might be easier just to do it in ZBrush. Do you do much 3D printing? Not at all. However, I do have a Elgu. Is that how you pronounce it? They sent me a 3D printer, so I do need to set that up over break when I have 5 minutes. I'll set that up and we'll start printing some stuff out. That'll be fun, right? Medieval planks, something super organic. Yes. And if you, actually, there's a fun one. If you go through here, I want to say, not that I don't think I would do this method necessarily, but just because it reminded me, if I go in here to patterns, planks, there's like a little plank brush in here. But probably what I would do for wooden planks is, well, you know, we could probably just use this. Let's say, yeah, delete higher, delete lower, control shift, delete hidden, and then we'll go through here and we'll say insert single edge loop, hold down alt. So we have a path for my planks. So then if I want to do planks here, let's hope it doesn't crash, because sometimes when I hop out of a tool, sometimes it will. Cube 3D, edit, make polymesh 3D. One way, if I want to just get, you can see how I just have garbage geometry on here. Again, ZRemesh half, depth size down to 0, detect edges. That'll go through and give me a little bit better geometry. And again, I could just keep doing that. There we go, nice wood plank, right? So I can turn this into an insert mesh brush, create insert mesh new. So now I have an insert mesh brush, but if I go back here and I'm saying, give me them wooden planks, I could model this so that I can unsew all these edges and model these. However, I can now go back to our insert mesh brush that we have, and I'm going to say brush, create, insert nanomesh brush. So now when I drag this on and I say insert nanomesh, all polygons, let's do polygroup all here, and then we need to, 2 ways to go about fixing this. You can go down here to geometry, modify topology, and there should be a align edge, but also under nanomesh there should be an alignment, align to normal, or align to short edge, align to long edge. There you go. So we'll do align to long edge. And the cool thing about this is, so now we've got our planks, and then, you know, you can do the scale so they all kind of meet up here, but you can also dial in variance. So you can go through here and do length, width, height, maybe a little rotational variance, so that as you're doing your medieval planks, you know, you get a little bit of variance in there. Or you could do multiple insert mesh brushes and then kind of mix and match different types of planks, etc. Android app scan with most for Apple. I'm not sure. I don't do a ton of scanning with my phone. I just do photographs, but I should probably look into that. Last version of ZBrush uses for some of your vids to help me catch back up. Excellent. Yeah, actually, you're in really good shape then, because if you go to my YouTube channel, all of my what's new. Actually, my ArtStation page might be a little bit easier. Again, so here's YouTube channel playlists, and that's where all the stuff is. And then if you need something a little bit easier for your eyes, maybe in here, my very first. So you can do intro to ZBrush. Probably your best, you know, and here's an intro to ZBrush course that'll get you caught up. And then if you go down here, here's ZBrush 4R8 what's new, and you can literally just go to what's new videos all the way up to 2022, and you should be in pretty good shape for ZBrush stuff. I happen to create an end gun with ZModeler. Is ZBrush allergic to end guns? Yes, you cannot create end guns in ZBrush. Greetings from Round Rock. Oh gosh, you're like 40 miles away from me. I lived in Round Rock for a couple of years. Lived in Georgetown for a lot of years too. Cool. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're over. Well, all right. Thanks everybody. I know we went on a lot of tangents, but hopefully they were useful. Answered a lot of questions. Went over the lamp. So hopefully that was cool for peeps. I want to add screws, rivets. How do I make them exactly the same size throughout the model? There's a couple different ways. One way is with Nanomesh specifically. So, for example, if we go in here, you can go in here and BI brush insert, grab it in, you know, this. Here's a screw. Hold down Control, and that'll snap it to your brush size. So you can do that. However, you can also say brush create Nanomesh brush, and then you can go through here and you can say, oops, and we'll say M Phillips. So this will be a Nanomesh brush. I want a Nanomesh on all the polygroups here. And then you can go in here and you can say, you know what? Let's do a pattern. Oops, H tile. I'll do 3, I'll do 4. 4 and 4. And then you can do different pattern types. So you can say grid, you can do border, you can do corners, you know, and then you can go in here with your size and make those do whatever you want. You can do cross, I think, diagonal, plus sign. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. So that'll be one way to do it as well. So hold down Control to IMM them, or you can use Nanomesh. Cool. Thanks again, everybody. And I'll see you on Tuesday. I'll be streaming on Pixelogic's channel. Of course, it'll be on my YouTube channel afterwards too. So cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your